Joe Morelle didn't just question Pam Bondi. He dismantled her entire strategy in real time, and it happened so quickly, so cleanly, that you could practically feel the room tighten as soon as he began speaking. The moment he opened his mouth, you could tell this wasn't business as usual. This wasn't some polite back and forth where both sides pretend to listen while secretly waiting for their turn to talk. No, this was different. Morelle came prepared with facts, precision, and a calmness so sharp it felt like a warning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Ranking Member Meng for holding this important hearing, and thank you, Attorney General Bondi, for appearing before us today. Madam Attorney General, I serve, in addition to the Appropriations Committee, as a ranking member of the Committee on House Administration. I sent you a letter last week along with my Republican counterpart, Chairman Brian Stile, requesting an increase in federal prosecutory resources to address threats against members of Congress, particularly in light of what happened last week in Minnesota, that tragedy. In 2024, the U.S. Capitol Police identified and received nearly 9,500 concerning statements or threats against members. Federal prosecutors have only secured 8 convictions so far, and the heightened threat environment demands an all-hands-on-deck approach. Will you commit to assigning an assistant U.S. attorney or a special assistant U.S. attorney in each of the 94 federal districts to, at least on a part-time basis, investigate and prosecute threats against members of Congress?
So thank you for bringing that up, and I take that very seriously. Not only what happened in Minnesota was horrible. I've spoken to Keith Ellison. I've spoken to Amy Klobuchar about that. It's horrible. We are involved in that. The FBI was involved. Our U.S. attorneys are involved. Many of these are district to district. So the way we're doing that is, I will tell you, my National Security Division is involved in all of those and assisting in those. We meet every single morning and we discuss that. But many of those, Minnesota, will be handled in the state in which it happened. Another one is
So, may
Governor, I'm sorry if I can keep going. I'm sorry. I don't mean
Quickly,
to
though.
I filibuster. Governor Shapiro and what happened in Pennsylvania with Governor Shapiro. I've spoken to Governor Shapiro. We are working hand in hand, our U.S. attorney with the district attorney there, hand in hand, just like in Minnesota. I made sure our U.S. attorney and our district attorneys there were working hand in hand. Political party doesn't matter when something like this happens. And I also want to make sure all members of Congress are safe as well.
Okay, and I would reiterate, Chairman Stile and I think Chairman Stile and I agree that at least a part-time in each of the 94 districts would be appropriate. Let me change topics for just a moment. I'm
Really
sorry.
quick on that. Yes, we're doing that through our National Security Division, so I think that's already in the works, and I would be glad to meet with you in a secure facility to talk about that.
Very good, thank you. Continuing, in addition to my role here, the committee that I serve on as an authorizer oversees Capitol security as well as federal elections, so I'm closely following the aftermath of January 6th. Recently, several defendants who received presidential pardons related to that day are now arguing in court that the pardon covers crimes like, for instance, illegal firearm possession discovered in a search of an individual's home in California months after January 6th. What's your position on whether the pardons cover these separate offenses?
The pardon power rests with the president, not the Department of Justice, and some of that is pending litigation, and I cannot discuss pending litigation.
Well, I'm not asking you about who has the right to a pardon. I think as the Department of Justice in February wrote, the pardon is an act of grace which removes the punishment from a crime a person has committed. It further said, in its effect, the granting of a pardon is in no sense the overturning of a judgment of conviction. It is an executive action that mitigates or sets aside punishment. So as the chief law enforcement officer, what's your opinion, not the president's power of whether he can offer a pardon? That's pretty clear in the Constitution. But for crimes committed unrelated to January 6th, would you suggest that the pardons would cover activities or crimes potentially committed outside of that by the same person?
Well, I don't know if you're referring to Joe Biden pardoning his son after he said he would not pardon Hunter Biden, or the
No, I actually
commutation
referred
of
to
all
January
the
6th. I'm sorry.
all the sentences that the people that were on death row. I've met with those families.
No,
and
I-
all of those sentences were commuted. I'm not going to comment on pardons on either side of the aisle.
So, well, I'm not asking about either side. I'm asking you're the chief law enforcement officer in the United States. You have a responsibility directly, you swore an oath to the Constitution, not the president. Want to know what your views are on the extent to which pardons cover potential crimes committed by individuals who have been pardoned but unrelated to January 6th.
Do you mean the ones that were done by the auto pen? I'm not going to discuss
right.
anything that
Mr.
could be
Chairman,
or not be
I
pending litigation.
respectfully, Ms. DeLauro accused you of filibustering. I think that's the height of filibustering. This is a serious, serious topic. And for you to suggest that you don't have an opinion or to divert to other things that have nothing to do with January 6 pardons, I think is frankly demeaning to your responsibilities and your job. With that, I'll yield back.
And Bondi, from the very first second, felt that pressure. You could see it in the way she hesitated, the way she paused just slightly too long before answering, the way her responses drifted toward anything except the thing he was actually asking. It was the kind of opening minute that grabs an audience and refuses to let go, because you can sense that something is about to crack. And once the cracking starts, everything spills. Morelle began with a topic that should have forced a straight answer: the staggering number of threats against members of parliament. Nearly 10,000 in a single year. That alone is alarming enough. But what made the question explosive was the follow-up. Only 8 convictions. Not 80. 8. In a system supposedly built to protect public officials from targeted harassment, that number wasn't just low. It was a flashing sign that something was broken, something wasn't functioning, and someone needed to explain how such a massive gap could exist without anyone stepping up to fix it. But instead of giving clarity, Bondi pivoted. Not gradually, not subtly, immediately. It was the kind of pivot you see when someone feels a trap closing and tries, almost reflexively, to redirect the spotlight somewhere, anywhere else. She responded with a broad, polished statement about seriousness, meetings, agency involvement, coordination. Words designed to sound important without actually saying anything. But Morelle didn't blink. He didn't let the vagueness slide. He pulled the conversation right back to the heart of the matter with the precision of someone who wasn't there to play political games. Every time she tried to steer the discussion towards safer ground, he calmly nudged it back, exposing the pattern emerging right in front of everyone watching. Bondi wasn't answering. She wasn't addressing. She wasn't engaging. She was avoiding. And Morelle was making that avoidance impossible to hide. As she continued talking, she floated into fragments about different states, different officials, different incidents, details that sounded important until you realized they had nothing to do with the specific question he had asked. It was misdirection dressed as explanation, but the problem with misdirection is that it only works when the other person lets it. Morelle didn't. He kept returning to the same point: the overwhelming number of threats compared to the microscopic number of prosecutions. It was math that refused to disappear, no matter how far she tried to wander from it. And you could feel the tension rising because everyone watching knew what was happening. The numbers didn't add up. Her answers didn't add up. And the more she spoke, the more it became clear that she didn't have the answer she needed. But then Morelle shifted. He had already exposed the cracks in her responses about threats, and now he moved into the second half of his questioning, a topic even more explosive, more delicate, and far more politically dangerous. Pardons. Not who had the power to issue them, not who deserved them, but whether a pardon tied to one incident could be stretched to cover separate, unrelated offenses committed months later. It was a clean, simple legal question that should have been answered easily by someone in her role. But instead of clarity, Bondi froze. She retreated behind the phrase, pending litigation, a shield pulled up instantly, almost automatically, even though Morelle wasn't asking about any specific case. He wasn't asking her to comment on individuals. He wasn't asking her to evaluate a defendant. He was asking about the legal reach of a pardon, something she should have been able to address without hesitation. The avoidance became obvious. And when someone avoids a question that directly falls under their responsibilities, it creates a second question. Why? Bondi pivoted again, this time dragging unrelated pardons into the conversation, introducing examples that didn't match the scenario Morelle was describing, as if bringing up entirely different cases would somehow distract from the fact that she still hadn't provided an answer to the actual question. It didn't work. Morelle tightened the focus even more. He pointed out, calmly but firmly, that he wasn't asking about the president's rights. He wasn't asking about individual cases. He was asking about her legal position, her interpretation of the breadth of executive clemency. In other words, her job. And again, she dodged. That's when the moment broke. Morelle, maintaining the same steady tone, told her directly that she was avoiding the question. He said it plainly, without theatrics, without raising his voice, but with a sharpness that made the entire room stop. He accused her of filibustering. He called out her deflection. He confronted the fact that she had repeatedly veered into unrelated talking points and still hadn't addressed the central issue. And right there, Bondi didn't just lose control of the conversation. She lost the illusion of control altogether. The power of the moment wasn't in dramatic noise. It was in the quiet, devastating precision of being caught dodging a question live, with no escape route left. It became clear that this wasn't a misunderstanding or a miscommunication. It was a pattern, a deliberate avoidance strategy that had just been exposed by someone who refused to let the fog swallow the truth. What made this moment so gripping, so impossible to look away from, was how much it revealed without either person needing to say it explicitly. You could see how pressure exposes the difference between confidence and performance. When the questions were broad, Bondi spoke smoothly, comfortably, almost rehearsed. But when pressed for specifics, real specifics, everything shifted. The pauses grew longer. The answers grew wider. The content grew thinner. And the dodging became impossible to disguise. Morelle wasn't trying to embarrass her. He wasn't trying to win points. He was trying to get answers. Answers the public deserved. Answers the system required. Answers that someone in her position should have been prepared to give. His frustration wasn't political. It was structural. A system with nearly 10,000 threatening statements and only 8 convictions isn't a system functioning properly. And a legal authority who can't clearly articulate the scope of a pardon is someone either unprepared or unwilling to speak plainly. And neither option inspires confidence. The deeper issue exposed in this hearing wasn't the threats themselves or the pardons themselves. It was the culture of evasion that surrounds them. A culture where difficult questions are met with vague phrases, broad statements, unrelated examples, and just enough confusion to make the audience forget what the original question even was. But this time, someone refused to let the question die. Someone refused to accept the fog. Someone refused to let political strategy silence public accountability. That's why the moment became so powerful. Not because voices were raised or arguments exploded, but because calm, relentless pressure forced the truth into the open. That sometimes, the most revealing answer is the one a person refuses to give. By the end of the exchange, Bondi wasn't just avoiding Morelle's questions. She was avoiding the image of competence she tried to present. And Morelle wasn't just exposing her evasiveness. He was exposing a larger pattern of political maneuvering that the public has grown increasingly tired of. People want clarity, not word clouds. They want answers, not pivots. They want leaders who engage with the tough questions, not ones who run from them behind polished fragments of unrelated talking points. And that's why this confrontation resonated so strongly. It didn't just reveal something about Bondi. It revealed something about the entire landscape of modern political communication. The hearing ended, but the implications didn't. The exchange raised real questions about transparency, accountability, and the expectations placed on those in positions of power. And when those officials dodge, pivot, or distort, moments like this pull the curtain back so the public can see exactly what's happening. That's why this clip is circulating everywhere. It's not just a heated exchange. It's a warning shot. It's a reminder that avoiding the truth is harder when someone refuses to let go of it. And it's proof that even in environments built on strategy and messaging, a well-prepared questioner can still cut straight through the performance. If you want more breakdowns like this, deep dives, intense moments, political confrontations, and the stories behind the clips everyone is talking about, make sure you hit the subscribe button, drop a like, and turn on notifications. Trust me, the next video is even more controversial, and you won't want to miss what comes next.